My son's fiancée turned to her parents and said in Mandarin, "This old pig doesn't understand a thing. So stupid." She thought I was some fool who couldn't understand her. I understood every word, but I chose to stay silent and watch how far their little performance would go. What I heard next made me realize I had to protect my son from the most dangerous person he's ever met. Before I tell you what happened at that dinner table, let me know in the comments. Where are you watching this from? The aroma of pot roast filled my Arlington home that Friday evening. At 66, I'd perfected this recipe over decades of cooking for my late wife Sarah and our son Benjamin. Tonight felt different tonight. I was meeting the woman my boy claimed he wanted to marry. A Chinese-American woman named Grace Zhang, along with her parents who'd immigrated from Beijing years ago. What Benjamin didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I'd spent 15 years in military intelligence, much of it focused on Chinese communications. My Mandarin was as sharp as my English, a skill I'd kept classified even from my own family. "Dad, they're here." Benjamin's excitement was infectious as I opened the door to Grace and her parents. She stood there like something from a magazine, perfectly polished, with a practiced smile. "Mr. Thorne, thank you so much for having us," Grace said, handing me a potted orchid. "Your home is absolutely lovely. Benjamin talks about you constantly. He adores you." Behind her, Thomas and Elizabeth Zhang nodded with formal courtesy that reminded me of diplomatic functions from my army days. "Please call me Gideon," I replied, stepping aside, "and thank you. Sarah always loved orchids." Benjamin practically glowed as he guided Grace through our living room. "Grace teaches piano at the community center, Dad, and she volunteers at the animal shelter every weekend." "How wonderful," I said, genuinely impressed. "What kind of music do you prefer teaching?" "Oh, classical, mostly," Grace replied, her eyes lighting up. "Chopin, Debussy. Though I do enjoy teaching children popular songs. It keeps them engaged, you know." Dinner started beautifully. The pot roast was tender, conversation flowed easily. Thomas asked about my electronics repair shop. Elizabeth complimented the green bean casserole. Grace hung on Benjamin's every word about their wedding plans. "We're thinking spring," Benjamin said, cutting into his roast. "Maybe April. Grace wants cherry blossoms in the photos." "That sounds perfect, son," I said, raising my wine glass. "To new beginnings." Everything changed during dessert. Grace leaned toward her parents and switched to Mandarin. Her voice dropped to what she thought was a whisper, but my trained ears caught every word. What I heard made my blood run cold. She called me an old pig who didn't understand anything, said I looked stupid and would be an easy target. Then with a dismissive laugh, she told her parents, "Keep doing well, just continue like this." The casual cruelty in her voice, the way she spoke to them like employees receiving instructions rather than beloved parents, it hit me like a physical blow. My grip tightened on my coffee cup. Adrenaline surged through my veins, the same feeling I'd had in combat situations. Every instinct screamed at me to stand up and confront her right there. But decades of intelligence work had taught me patience. I forced my face to remain neutral, even managed to smile when Grace looked my way. "The pie is delicious, Mr. Thorne," Grace said in English, switching back to that honey-sweet voice. "You simply must give me the recipe. I'd love to make this for Benjamin." "Of course, dear," I replied, my voice steady despite the fury building inside. "Sarah would have loved to share it with you." As the evening wound down, I played the gracious host. I thanked them for coming, accepted their compliments, promised to have them back soon. Benjamin walked them to their car, completely oblivious to what had transpired at his father's table. When he returned, his face flushed with happiness. "Dad, thank you. This means everything to me. I can tell you really like her." I nodded and squeezed his shoulder, not trusting myself to speak. As I watched him drive away, I stood in my doorway, the cool October air clearing my head. She thought I was a fool. She had no idea I understood every single word. The smell of old electronics and WD-40 filled my workshop behind the house, mixing with the October morning air drifting through the open garage door. I'd been tinkering with this vintage Zenith radio for the better part of an hour, but my hands moved on autopilot. Sleep had been elusive all week. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Grace's voice again. "Old pig, stupid, easy target." The words echoed in my head like a broken record, each repetition stoking the fire of anger I'd been trying to contain. 30 years of marriage to Sarah had taught me patience, but this was different. This was my son's future at stake. The crunch of gravel in the driveway interrupted my brooding. Benjamin's Honda pulled up, and I watched through the window as he grabbed 2 coffee cups from the passenger seat. My boy always was thoughtful, took after his mother that way. "Morning, Dad," he called out, ducking under the half-raised garage door. His face carried that same glow it had worn all week. "Thought you might need some caffeine. You look tired." "Thanks, son." I accepted the steaming cup gratefully. "Just been working on this old radio. Mrs. Henderson's grandfather's. She wants it restored for her daughter." Benjamin perched on my workbench, careful not to disturb the scattered components. "Grace loved meeting you last week. She keeps asking when we can come back for dinner." The mention of her name sent a familiar jolt of irritation through me, but I kept my voice level. "She seems very fond of you." "She is?" His smile widened. "Dad, I've never felt like this before. She makes me want to be better, you know. Her parents are wonderful too, so traditional, so respectful. They remind me of Grandpa Chen from down the street when I was little." I set down my coffee cup, choosing my words carefully. "Son, sometimes people aren't who they appear to be." The change in Benjamin's expression was immediate. His shoulders stiffened, and that easy smile faded. "What do you mean by that?" "I just think you should take your time. Get to know them better before making any big decisions." "Dad, you're being unreasonable." The words came out sharper than I had expected. "You barely gave her a chance. She was nothing but polite and gracious, and you're already finding fault." I tried a different approach. "It's not about fault, Benjamin. It's about being careful. In the service, we learn to trust our instincts." "Your instincts?" He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his coffee. "Or your prejudices? Is this because she's Chinese? Because that's what this sounds like to me." The accusation hit like a slap. "That's not fair, and you know it." "Do I?" Benjamin's voice cracked with disappointment. "Grace warned me this might happen. She said some people have trouble accepting interracial relationships, even family." Grace warned him. The manipulation was so smooth, so calculated, it took my breath away. She'd planted seeds of doubt about me before I'd even said a word. "Son, that's not what this is about." "Then what is it about, Dad?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've already made up your mind about the woman I love." He headed for the door, then turned back, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I thought you'd want me to be happy. Mom would have supported me. She would have given Grace a real chance." The garage door slammed behind him, leaving me alone with the smell of motor oil and my own regrets. Through the window, I watched his car disappear down the street, taking with it any hope of an easy solution. I picked up the radio again, my hands steadier now, despite the turmoil in my chest. Sarah's picture smiled at me from the workbench. My compass for 35 years of marriage silent now when I needed her wisdom most. But I knew what she'd say. She'd tell me to protect our boy, no matter the cost. If words wouldn't convince him, evidence would, and I knew exactly who to call. 3 sleepless nights had passed since Benjamin stormed out of my workshop. I'd spent those dark hours staring at the ceiling, weighing my options, and mentally cataloging contacts from my Army intelligence days. Most were retired, now scattered across the country, but a few still worked in government positions where they might prove useful. Maria Santos topped that list. We'd served together in the 80s, back when intelligence work meant more shoe leather than computer screens. She'd been sharp then, the kind of analyst who could spot patterns others missed. And according to LinkedIn, she now worked for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. If anyone could help me dig into Grace Zhang's background quietly, it would be Maria. Murphy's Cafe sat just off Route 1, close enough to the Pentagon to attract the lunch crowd of contractors and government workers. I arrived early, claiming a corner booth where we could talk without being overheard. The familiar weight of conducting clandestine business settled over me like an old coat. Maria walked in at exactly 11:30, her silver hair shorter than I remembered, but her posture still military straight. She spotted me immediately. Old habits die hard in our line of work. "Gideon Thorne," she said, sliding into the booth opposite me. "When I got your call, I thought someone was playing a prank. 30 years and suddenly you need a favor." "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important, Maria. It's about Benjamin." Her expression softened. She'd attended Benjamin's high school graduation, sent cards every Christmas. In the intelligence community, work relationships often became family bonds. "What's wrong? Is he in trouble?" "Not yet, but I think he might be." I pulled out my phone, showing her the photos Benjamin had shared from his dinner dates with Grace. "He's engaged to this woman, Grace Zhang. Something feels off about her and her family." Maria studied the images, her trained eyes taking in details I'd probably missed. "What kind of off?" I chose my words carefully. "Inconsistencies in their behavior. The way they interact doesn't feel natural, more like they're performing roles than being themselves. And some things they've said. I paused, unable to reveal my linguistic advantage. My instincts are screaming that something's wrong. Your instincts were always solid, Maria said, handing back the phone. What do you need? Background checks on all three of them. Grace Zhang Thomas and Elizabeth Zhang. They claim to be from Beijing originally, but now live in Fairfax. I need to know if they are who they say they are. Maria nodded slowly. Immigration status, employment history, family connections, the full workup. I can run them through our databases, cross-reference with State Department records. It'll take a few days to be thorough. I slid a piece of paper across the table with their basic information names. Approximate ages, the address Benjamin had given me. I've got photos, social media profiles, anything else you might need. This stays between us, Maria said, pocketing the paper. If I find something and it goes legal, you didn't hear it from me first. Understood. She studied my face for a long moment. Gideon, I've seen you handle dangerous situations with ice in your veins. Right now you look like a man who's genuinely worried. What aren't you telling me? I met her gaze steadily. That my son is head over heels, in love with someone who might be using him, and if I'm right, it's going to destroy him. Maria's expression grew serious. I'll start running the checks this afternoon. Give me 72 hours. We shook hands outside the cafe, and I watched her disappear into the Pentagon City metro station. For the first time in days, I felt like I was taking action instead of just reacting. The next 2 days crawled by. I threw myself into repair work, fixing radios and televisions, with an intensity that surprised my customers. Grace visited Benjamin twice during that period, and I forced myself to be cordial when they stopped by the shop. She played her role perfectly, the devoted fiancée meeting her future father-in-law's friends, asking about family photos, complimenting my work. But I watched her more carefully now, looking for cracks in the facade. They were there, subtle but present, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes, how she steered conversations away from specific details about her past, the practiced quality of her responses to personal questions. On Thursday evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Maria. We need to talk. It's not good. My hands were steady as I called her back, but my heart was racing. Maria's voice was grim when she called. Gideon, you were right to be suspicious. Maria's call came at 7:30 Friday morning, jarring me from the first decent sleep I'd managed all week. We need to meet immediately, she said without preamble. Not Murphy's, somewhere more private. The parking garage behind the Marriott on Jefferson Davis Highway. The urgency in her voice sent adrenaline coursing through my system. Level 3 northwest corner, 20 minutes. She was waiting by her sedan when I arrived, a thick manila folder tucked under her arm. Her face carried the grim expression I remembered from briefings that had gone sideways. Get in, she said, sliding into my truck. We need to talk where no one can overhear us. Maria opened the folder, revealing documents and photographs that made my stomach clench. Gideon, your instincts were dead on. Grace Zhang isn't who she claims to be. She handed me an ICE database search result. Her real name is Xu Min. Grace Zhang is a fabricated identity she's been using for 8 months. The photograph showed the same face I'd seen across my dinner table, but the name beneath was completely different. How? Identity theft. The real Grace Zhang died in a car accident in California last year. Somehow Xu Min obtained her documents and assumed her identity. The next revelation hit harder. Maria showed me printouts from Arlington Community Theater's website, headshots for Thomas Thompson and Elizabeth Miller, listed under Cultural Family Package, ideal for ceremonies, community events, and immigration photos. They're not her parents. I said the words feeling surreal. Professional actors. We contacted them. They admitted being hired by Xu Min for $500 each to play her parents. The engagement photos Benjamin showed me. Rental studio in San Francisco, same backdrop we found in 4 other sample portfolios online. She's done this before Gideon. The final revelation was devastating. Maria handed me a marriage certificate translated from Chinese. Xu Min is currently married to Liu Wei in Guangzhou, China, 3 years legally valid. She never divorced him. I stared at the document. Marriage fraud, among other things. Immigration fraud identity, theft, conspiracy, federal crime territory. If she marries Benjamin, she could face 10 years in prison and permanent deportation. And Benjamin, if he's truly unaware he's a victim. But if authorities think he's complicit, Maria's expression was grave. He could face charges too. I organized the documents with military precision. The evidence painted a picture of calculated deception that made my blood run cold. What's our next move? Officially, I report this to my supervisors. This suggests a larger operation. Maria paused. Unofficially, you need to protect Benjamin. Get him away from her before this explodes. He won't listen. He thinks I'm prejudiced. Then you need proof he can't ignore. Maria gathered the documents. I can give you copies, but once this goes official, it moves fast. Federal prosecutors don't mess around with immigration fraud. I accepted the folder, its weight feeling heavier than it should. How long do we have? Maybe a week before the investigation becomes official. Maria prepared to leave, placing a hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry, Gideon. I know this isn't what you wanted to find. She was right. Part of me had hoped my suspicions were wrong, that Grace was simply a young woman with poor social skills or cultural differences I'd misinterpreted. But the evidence was irrefutable. Looking at the documents spread across the table, I realized this was bigger than I thought. Maria's contact at the FBI worked faster than I'd expected. By Monday afternoon, I was sitting in a sterile conference room at the Washington field office, facing Special Agent Jennifer Walsh, across a metal table covered with the evidence Maria had compiled. Agent Walsh was younger than I'd anticipated, maybe early 40s, with sharp eyes, and the kind of focused intensity that reminded me of my best intelligence officers. She'd spent the better part of an hour reviewing every document, asking pointed questions about timeline and verification procedures. Mr. Thorne, she said, finally closing the folder, this is impressive work. Immigration fraud cases usually take months to develop this kind of comprehensive evidence. Maria Santos is thorough, I replied. Always was. The question now is how we proceed. Walsh leaned back in her chair. We have enough to arrest Shu Min on identity theft and immigration fraud charges, but I'd prefer to build a stronger case. These organized operations usually involve multiple victims. What do you need? Ideally, we'd like her to incriminate herself further, maybe reveal information about how she obtained the false documents, whether she's working with others. Walsh studied me carefully. You mentioned she's comfortable in your home. Would you be willing to participate in a controlled operation? The weight of what she was asking settled over me. You want me to invite her back for dinner? With full FBI surveillance and support, we'd wire your home, have agents positioned nearby. If she says anything incriminating, we'd have it on record. I thought about Benjamin's face when he'd stormed out of my workshop, the pain in his voice when he'd accused me of prejudice. My son would have to be there. He's completely unaware of what she really is. That might work in our favor. If she believes you've accepted her, she may be more careless about what she says. Walsh's expression softened slightly. I understand this puts you in a difficult position with your family. Agent Walsh, my son is planning to marry a woman who's already married to someone else. She's using him to commit federal crimes. Any difficulty with family is secondary to protecting him. She nodded approvingly. How would you approach this? I'd been thinking about that since leaving the parking garage Friday morning. I'll tell Benjamin I've reconsidered, that maybe I was too hasty in my judgment. He's been wanting us to have dinner again. He'll jump at the chance to arrange it. And Grace, she'll come. She thinks she's won, that she's successfully turned my son against me. She won't be able to resist the opportunity to solidify her victory. Agent Walsh opened a legal pad and began taking notes. We'll need at least 48 hours to set up surveillance equipment. Can you arrange the dinner for Friday evening? I'll call Benjamin today. Mr. Thorne, I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. Once we activate this operation, there's no going back. If Shu Min incriminates herself, we'll arrest her that night. Your son will witness his fiancée being taken into federal custody. The image hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my voice steady. Better he sees the truth now than discovers it after they're married. 2 hours later, I was back in my workshop, staring at Benjamin's number on my phone. The conversation would require every ounce of acting ability I possessed. He answered on the second ring. Dad, Benjamin, I owe you an apology. The words came easier than I'd expected. I've been thinking about our conversation, and you're right. I didn't give Grace a fair chance. The silence stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Dad, are you serious? I'd like to invite her and her parents back for dinner. Friday night, if they're available. I want to start over. Wow. Yes, absolutely. Grace will be thrilled. She's been worried that you don't like her. Tell her I'm looking forward to getting to know her better. After Benjamin hung up, I sat in the gathering dusk of my workshop, surrounded by the familiar smell of electronics and motor oil. In 3 days, I would sit across from Grace Zhang or Schumann or whoever she really was and watch federal agents destroy the elaborate lies she'd built around my son's heart. As I set the table for Friday's dinner, I wondered if Grace suspected anything. Friday evening arrived with the crisp clarity of an October night. Grace and her parents appeared at my door at exactly 6:30, punctual as always. She carried a bouquet of white roses. Thomas wore a fresh-pressed suit, and Elizabeth had brought homemade cookies in a decorative tin. "Mr. Thorne, thank you so much for this second chance," Grace said, her smile radiant with what looked like genuine warmth. "I know Benjamin means the world to you. Please come in," I replied, accepting the flowers. The wire taped to my chest felt heavy beneath my shirt, but my voice remained steady. "I'm looking forward to getting to know you better." Benjamin practically glowed as he helped them with their coats. The relief on his face was almost unbearable. My son truly believed we were healing our family rift. Dinner progressed smoothly. I'd prepared the same menu as our first meeting: pot roast mashed potatoes, green beans. Grace complimented every dish, asked thoughtful questions about my electronics shop, and shared charming stories about her piano students. Her performance was flawless. "This is exactly how I imagined family dinners would be," she said, squeezing Benjamin's hand. "You're so lucky to have such a thoughtful father." But I caught the subtle probing beneath her words. "You seem much more relaxed tonight, Mr. Thorne. I was worried after our first meeting that I'd somehow offended you." "Not at all," I assured her. "Sometimes first impressions can be misleading." As we moved to dessert apple pie again, I felt the familiar weight of approaching action. Agent Walsh would be positioned outside waiting for my signal. "Grace," I said, setting down my coffee cup, "I've been thinking about our first dinner together." She tilted her head, suddenly cautious. "Oh, I hope it was pleasant for you." I switched to Mandarin without warning. "Did you really think I couldn't understand?" The change in Grace was instantaneous. Her face drained of color, her hand froze halfway to her mouth. What did you just say?" "You called me an old pig, said I was stupid and an easy target." Benjamin's fork clattered against his plate. "Dad, wait. You speak Mandarin. How do you know what she said?" "That's because Grace isn't her real name." I kept my voice level, professional. "Her real name is Shu Min." "Benjamin, he's lying." Grace's composure cracked, desperation bleeding through. "Don't listen to him." "She's already married," I continued. "Has been for 3 years. To a man named Liu Wei in Guangzhou." Thomas shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly. "This is insane. We're leaving right now." "Sit down, Mr. Thompson," I said calmly. "Arlington Community Theater. Write $500 each to play loving parents." Benjamin's voice came out broken. "Dad, you speak Chinese. Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Military intelligence, son. I learned it 30 years ago." I watched his world crumble in real time. "I've been investigating your fiancé for 2 weeks. Grace grabbed Benjamin's arm frantically. "Please, he's trying to destroy us because he's jealous. He can't stand that you love someone more than him." The doorbell rang at exactly 8 p.m. Agent Walsh entered with 2 backup agents, their badges clearly visible. The professionalism of their entrance was both reassuring and terrifying. "I'm our Shu Mim," Agent Walsh said, her voice carrying absolute authority. "You're under federal investigation for immigration fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy." Grace's scream pierced the air. "This is entrapment. You set me up." "Yes," I said quietly, "I did." Elizabeth collapsed into her chair, tears streaming. "We're just actors. She paid us $500 each. We didn't know it was illegal." Grace whirled on me, her mask finally falling away completely. "You think you've won, old man?" "I think I've protected my son." Benjamin sat in stunned silence, then whispered, "Grace, was any of it real?" She tried to run, then bolting toward the kitchen door, but Agent Walsh's backup was waiting. The handcuffs clicked with mechanical precision as they read her rights. Grace cursed in rapid Mandarin words I understood but wouldn't repeat. Benjamin remained motionless in his chair, hands shaking, staring at the empty space where his future had been sitting moments before. As the FBI car pulled away, Benjamin looked at me with eyes I'd never seen before. The silence that followed the FBI car's departure was deafening. Benjamin sat motionless at the dining table, staring at the empty chairs, where Grace and her fake parents had been sitting moments before. The untouched apple pie sat between us like evidence of a life that had just been shattered. I cleared my throat gently. "Son, don't." His voice was barely a whisper. "Just don't. Not yet." I walked to my study and returned with the manila folder Maria had given me. The weight of it seemed heavier now, loaded with the destruction it had caused. I set it carefully in front of Benjamin. "This is everything we found," I said quietly. "Her real name, the fake parents, the marriage certificate from China. I wanted to show you before, but I wouldn't have listened." Benjamin's hands trembled as he opened the folder. His eyes moved across the documents, the actor profiles, the marriage certificate, the identity theft evidence. Each page seemed to hit him like a physical blow. "How long have you known?" he asked, finally not looking up from the papers. "I suspected something the first night. I've been investigating for 2 weeks. 2 weeks." He laughed bitterly. 2 weeks while I was planning a wedding to someone who doesn't even exist. His phone buzzed a text message. Benjamin glanced at it and his face crumpled. "It's from her number. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I did love you." Even now, she's still lying. I reached across the table, but he pulled back. "I need some time, Dad. I need to process this." That was Friday night. Saturday and Sunday passed without a word from Benjamin. I threw myself into repair work, fixing a vintage television for Mrs. Chen and rewiring a radio that had belonged to someone's grandfather. My hands stayed busy, but my mind raced with worry that I'd lost my son along with his fiancée. Agent Walsh called Sunday evening with updates. Grace Shu Min had confessed to everything in exchange for avoiding additional charges. The fake parents were cooperating, fully providing information about how she'd recruited them. Deportation proceedings would begin within the week. "Your son's not in any legal trouble," Walsh assured me. "He was clearly a victim in this." Monday night brought no call. Tuesday stretched endlessly. By Wednesday, I was convinced I'd traded my son's safety for his love, and the price felt too high. Then at 11:47 p.m. my phone rang. "Dad." Benjamin's voice was thick with emotion, barely controlled. "I'm here, son. I've been thinking for 3 days straight, and I keep coming back to the same thing." He paused, and I heard him take a shaky breath. "I defended her against you. I chose a stranger over my own father." "Benjamin." "No, let me finish. You were protecting me, and I made you the villain. I called you paranoid. I accused you of prejudice. I threw Mom's memory at you like a weapon." His voice cracked completely. "How do you forgive someone who is so blind?" The pain in his voice nearly broke me. Son, loving someone isn't blindness. It's hope. It's the willingness to believe the best in people. That's not a flaw, that's who you are, and it's one of the things I'm most proud of. But I should have listened to you. Maybe, but if I'd been wrong, you'd have spent your life wondering if you gave up happiness because your old man couldn't let go. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Trust has to be earned back, I know that. But love doesn't disappear because of mistakes. The silence stretched between us filled with 30 years of father-son history. "Can I come over tomorrow?" he asked finally. "I want to understand everything. How you knew what you felt, how you managed to save me from myself." "Of course, I'll make coffee." "The good stuff. The good stuff." After he hung up, I sat in my kitchen looking at Sarah's picture on the windowsill. Our boy was coming home. The next evening, Benjamin arrived with takeout Chinese food, a gesture that would have been impossible a week ago. We spread the evidence across the dining table, and I walked him through every step of the investigation. He asked hard questions, and I gave honest answers. As we finished the lo mein, Benjamin leaned back in his chair and studied me with new eyes. "Dad, I need to ask you something. How did you stay so calm through all this?" 3 weeks had passed since that Friday night dinner. The legal proceedings moved with federal efficiency. Grace had been deported with a 10-year ban, while the fake parents received community service and hefty fines. The bell above my shop door chimed as Mrs. Patterson brought in her ancient television. "Same fuzzy problem," I diagnosed, already reaching for my tools. As I worked, I found myself thinking about Benjamin's question from the night before. How had I stayed calm? The answer had something to do with experience, knowing that panic clouds judgment and clear thinking saves lives. Benjamin walked in carrying coffee and lunch from Murphy's Deli. These visits had become routine over the past week, comfortable rituals that reminded me of when he was 12. "How's work going?" I asked. "Good. Actually great." He paused thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about what you said about trusting instincts. There's this new project manager, and something about her felt rehearsed." "What did you do?" I asked more questions, dug deeper into her references. Turns out her last 3 jobs ended under questionable circumstances. Benjamin smiled. 6 months ago, I would have ignored that feeling. The pride I felt was overwhelming. Benjamin wasn't becoming cynical, he was becoming wise. A young man entered carrying a vintage radio. Someone said you might fix this. It belonged to my grandfather. I examined it carefully. It'll take some work, but yes, might take a week. He hesitated, then asked, "Can I ask you something? My girlfriend wants to move in together, but something feels rushed. She's pushing hard, and I can't shake the feeling I'm missing something." Benjamin and I exchanged a look. "Trust that feeling," I said gently. "When someone's rushing you toward a big decision, ask yourself why the timing matters so much to them." After he left, Benjamin shook his head. "Does this happen often, relationship advice, in an electronics shop?" "More than you'd think. Some kinds of knowledge only come from living through things." We worked together for the next hour, Benjamin helping with inventory, while I shared stories from my Army days lessons about reading people, trusting teammates, making decisions under pressure. As afternoon wound down, Benjamin prepared to leave. At the door, he turned back. "Dad, thank you. Not just for saving me from Grace, but for showing me what it looks like to protect someone without controlling them." After he drove away, I stood watching his taillights disappear. The October air carried the scent of burning leaves and distant sounds of children playing. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds. Inside, I walked to Sarah's photograph on the kitchen windowsill. "Our boy is safe now," I told her picture, "and he's stronger for having gone through it." A father's instincts never retire. We see dangers our children can't and love them enough to act on it. Sometimes that means letting them make mistakes, and sometimes it means stepping in when the stakes are too high. The trick is knowing the difference. I turned off the shop lights, already looking forward to Sunday dinner with Benjamin. Next time someone tried to deceive him, he'd know what to look for. Looking back on this journey, I realized that betrayal stories like mine aren't just about deception, they're about the strength we find when everything we thought we knew crumbles around us. This true story taught me that a father's love isn't measured by how much we trust, but by how far we'll go to protect what matters most. God gave us instincts for a reason. When something feels wrong, when the pieces don't quite fit, that's not paranoia. That's divine wisdom whispering through experience. I've learned that the Lord works through the skills we've gained, the people we've known, and even the sleepless nights that force us to act. The hardest lesson, sometimes protecting someone means becoming the villain in their story, at least temporarily. Benjamin hated me for weeks, but God knew what I couldn't see then, that our relationship would emerge stronger, built on truth instead of comfortable lies. These betrayal stories remind us that evil often wears a beautiful mask. Grace's deception was masterful, but the Almighty equipped me with everything I needed to see through it. Military training, loyal friends like Maria, and most importantly, a father's unshakable love. This true story changed both Benjamin and me. He's more careful now, but not cynical. He's learned to trust his instincts while keeping his heart open. As for me, I've discovered that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to let someone you care about destroy themselves even when they beg you to step aside. The truth is, we're all vulnerable to deception when we want something badly enough. But God places people in our lives, parents, friends, mentors, who can see what we cannot. The wise person listens. The foolish one pushes them away. Every father reading this knows the weight of protecting their children from dangers they can't see. It's a sacred responsibility that doesn't end when they turn 18 or get engaged or start their own lives. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect someone you love? Share this video with parents who understand that love sometimes means saying the hard things. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories about family courage and the wisdom that comes from never giving up on the people who matter most.